Joining us this morning from Erie, Pennsylvania is Jeffrey Bloodworth. He's the American Political History Professor at Gannon University, here to talk about the political makeup and history of the Keystone State. Let's just begin with the demographics of Pennsylvania. According to the Washington Post, 2/3 of the state's 67 counties have experienced a drop in population in recent years. What's the political impact of this?
Yeah, I mean, large parts of, Rust Belt and other counties, what we've seen for a generation in Pennsylvania are people moving to the Sun Belt in search of jobs. And the political impact outside of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, Pennsylvanians have been taking it on the chin economically in an age of globalization and kind of the shift from an industrial economy to a knowledge economy. And so unemployment is low, stock market is up, but a lot of Pennsylvanians don't feel like the economy works for them. And I mean, this is what's driving Trump's energy in 2016 and in 2024 here in Pennsylvania.
Who were those voters, the ones that left seeking jobs in the Sun Belt? Did they tend to vote for one party?
Well, look, I mean, Pennsylvania, especially since World War II, has been largely, at least at the presidential level, a Democratic stronghold, mostly sending Democratic senators to the Senate. I mean, Republicans have been competitive. And so you have, Democrats leaving the state and their families who were left behind, registered Democrats in rural western Pennsylvania, in northeast Pennsylvania, which is famously where Joe Biden's family is from. These are ancestral Democrats who feel left behind. I live in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's very representative of a Rust Belt county, a Rust Belt city of Erie. You go to Philadelphia and Pittsburgh or Washington, D.C., and you see, almost a different America. One that's thriving, and everybody in Erie, nearly every family has a family member who's moved to Nashville or Charlotte or somewhere in Texas in search of a better job. People in Erie County, they want their grandkids to live down the street, not 500 miles away. And that's the story throughout much of the state, is an economy that is not working, or at least the perception is not working for kind of working class Americans, those who are not part of the knowledge, economy elites.
When you look at, this is from the state of Pennsylvania, voter party registration, just over 9 million registered voters, 44% Democrats, 40% Republicans, 12% no affiliation, 4% other. How has that changed over the years and in recent years?
In recent years, since 2016, the Republicans have been narrowing that gap significantly. Democrats used to enjoy, here in Erie County, it's, I think, 44-25 registration advantage Democrat over Republican. And a lot of these ancestral Democrats will vote Republican depending on the candidate often, but they've been switching registration because Donald Trump in 2016 especially, he ran a more disciplined campaign, and he really did talk about the issues that really hit people outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And so the Republicans are narrowing the registration advantage in Pennsylvania. When I first moved here in 2007, this was not a swing state. But it most certainly is a swing state today, just because, the economy outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, a lot of Pennsylvanians don't feel like they're getting ahead. They see their kids and their grandkids moving either to Philadelphia or Pittsburgh or leaving the state entirely. And look, that's the strength of the Trumpist movement in a state like Pennsylvania. And throughout, I would say, Wisconsin and Michigan, the story is much the same.
You wrote a piece recently headlined Erie County, the linchpin to a Democratic presidency. Explain.
Look, Erie County has pointed the way of the state at presidential level, at the presidential election. If whoever wins Erie County at the presidential level wins the state, and that's been the case since 1944, except for 1988. So whoever wins Erie County almost always is going to win the state. And so if Pennsylvania is the linchpin of whoever is going to win the presidency, that means that they're most likely going to win Erie County.
What about the age of voters in the state of Pennsylvania, and how how has that changed over the years? The impact of that on politics.
The age of the voters?
Yes.
Yeah, look, Pennsylvania, this is becoming an older state. And so there's still a significant number of universities and college students here, which is, can you register these college students and turn them out to vote? That's often the key to a Democrat winning the state. But as the state has kind of trended to be older, what this has done is it's helped make the Republicans more competitive, because there is this real sense of economic and demographic decline in Pennsylvania, especially outside of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. I mean, I don't want to give the wrong impression. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are, growing, vibrant places, very robust economically. Erie, Pennsylvania has, in the last 10 years, has had its own kind of renaissance. And so there are green shoots of real economic change and growth in the city of Erie. But the demographic change in the state is that younger people are often leaving the state, or at least leaving their hometowns and going to Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And that's giving the sense of, outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, a real sense of economic decline.
Debbie's in Philadelphia, voting for the vice president. Hi, Debbie. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. First of all, remember, when we vote, we win. It's interesting, the information that I'm hearing from the different guests that give information about Pennsylvania. On the ground, that's not what you see. So I'm just
What do you
curious.
see? Debbie, what do you see on the ground?
I see folks having the same issues in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, Erie, all of Pennsylvania. That's what I see.
Which is
I
what?
don't see, which is economy. The only thing that I think I would not list is immigration in Philadelphia. I don't know about any, but all the other issues are the issues. Now, they're not leaning one way or another. I'm just talking about issues. I'm not talking about how they're voting. But I hear this separation of issues depending on what part of the state you live. That's not what I see. Walking around, talking to folks, being an activist in the city of Philadelphia, talking with other people that are activists in the rest of the state. So I would love to hear the gentleman talk about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Look, I agree. I mean, largely speaking, the issues in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are the issues that people have in Erie about inflation, about jobs, about, are my kids going to live better than I'm living? I would say, my stepdaughter goes to college in Philadelphia. I've spent a lot of time there in the last 6 years. There is a difference in that if you live in places like Altoona or Erie or even a smaller city in Pennsylvania, it's even more so. The sense that if your kids are going to have a future, it's not going to be in the city or town that you live in. And there is this greater sense that if you get a 4-year college degree, you're going to have to leave. And so I agree with the caller in that the issues are the same. I guess I would say the sense of urgency in smaller cities and small town life in Pennsylvania is that you're going to have to leave in order to make a go of it. And there's a lot of commonality. It's not to say that everybody in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are, upper middle class and doing great. Not the case at all. But the problem, I think, is that for people outside those two major cities, there's this sense that there's not much of a future there. And again, in Erie, there've been a real renaissance. There's a mayor who's been quite effective in forging a turnaround. We actually had a building in downtown Erie being built for the first time in 50 years. So I don't want to give a sense that it's hopeless, because it is not. But there is a sense amongst people in small cities and small town Pennsylvania that the world has kind of passed them by.
Professor Bloodworth, why is historically Pennsylvania referred to as one of the bricks in Democrats' blue wall?
Look, it's a large state with a significant, wallop in the Electoral College. Ron Brownstein in, I think, 2008 coined the term the blue wall. I mean, at that time, he meant there was 19 states that a Democrat had won in, I think, 4 consecutive presidential elections. But Pennsylvania, because of its heft, because of its size, is kind of the linchpin of the blue wall. And look, demographically and economically, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania all move one way or the other. And these are large states that have a significant share of the overall electoral college. A Democrat just has to win these 3 states in order to win the presidency. And historically, these have been Democratic bastions. And it's telling that these are now swing states. They still have a light blue tint, but they're swing states now instead of hardcore blue states that Democrats didn't really used to have to really worry that much about it, especially during the Clinton or Obama era. I mean, they were tightly contested. But it's quite telling that these are the battleground states now. And it's telling because over 50% of the population in these 3 states are non-college white voters, and they feel like the economy doesn't work for them in the same way that people with a 4-year college degree in cities feel that the economy works for them.
Ronald in Jericho, New York, undecided.
Good morning. I love Pennsylvania. I've spent some time down there. Unfortunately, I think without question the voting system in Pennsylvania is terribly corrupt. For example, in 2008, in Philadelphia, it was reported that John McCain got 0 votes in Philadelphia, and in 2020, when Donald Trump was ahead by hundreds of thousands of votes, then in the middle of the night, it changed 180 degrees, and he was behind greatly. I believe without question that this is totally corrupt in the voting system.
All right, we'll get a reaction from the professor.
Okay, with all due respect, that's just nonsense. I can tell you, my 81-year-old mother, Republican registered mother, worked in the Erie County courthouse to open the mail-in ballots in 2020. Look, if my 81-year-old Republican mother is part of this vast conspiracy, then it's just laughable. That's just not true. And whoever wins, we need to respect the results. But this idea that the Pennsylvania electoral system is corrupt, in Erie County, it was a Republican who ran the county election office in 2020, a wonderful public servant. I had like 10 students working the Erie County election office. I suppose if undergraduates who are patriotic and doing their job to make democracy work, and my 81-year-old mother are all in cahoots, this is just silly, and we. I just wish we'd stop with this silliness.
Doug, St. Petersburg, Florida.
Hello. I'm following up about the issue of whether a woman could or should be elected as a president. I think that's an issue in Florida as well as in Pennsylvania. But I served as an evangelical pastor for more than 43 years, and many of my evangelical friends ignore the fact that Jesus spoke to women as equals, and he gave them some leadership. Paul credited Lydia and Phoebe as leaders in the church. Women were listed by all 4 Gospels as the first courageous witnesses to stand by Jesus and be present at his resurrection. But other history that is a lot closer to our time is women fought for decades for women's suffrage, and they didn't give up until they finally had the right to vote. It was a woman, Frances Perkins, serving through both of FDR's terms, who gave us a lot of help for workers to limit the work week to 54 hours, to abolish child labor, to give us a Social Security program for old age insurance, minimum wage laws, unemployment relief for workers, and on and
Doug,
on.
I'll jump in at that point. So, Professor Bloodworth, what role could women play? What role historically have they played in the state of Pennsylvania?
Well, Pennsylvania has never elected a female governor. We've never had a female senator. And so the caller kind of shines a light on a kind of forgotten issue. It's undetermined whether the role that gender will play with Kamala Harris and Pennsylvania voters. I think the past tells us that it does matter a little bit with some voters who may feel uncomfortable with voting for a woman to be president. At the same time, there are a heck of a lot of women in the state of Pennsylvania who are very fired up to vote for a woman. I imagine this is probably going to be a wash, but it is, kind of a historical fact in Pennsylvania that Pennsylvania has not been at the tip of the spear in electing women to high-profile offices. And so that's something to keep an eye on. I mean, look at the exit polls. If Harris loses the state, and it'll be interesting to see. Look, in a close race, lots of things can make a difference. This is something that could make a difference. I doubt this is going to be decisive, but the caller is pointing to something that that has some resonance, especially with Pennsylvania's political past.
All right, we'll go to Pennsylvania, Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Dennis is watching there. Dennis, you're supporting the vice president.
Yes, I tried to call in on the PA line, but I couldn't get through, so I got on the Democrat line.
Okay.
Yes, I fully support. I've already voted. I voted this 27th of September by mail, and the professor has touched on a couple things that I think people are kind of missing. The fact that these rural counties in Pennsylvania have lost population. Lycoming County lost 1.9% of their population between 2010 and 2020. One of the western counties in the western part of the state lost 10% of their population, and I believe Erie is where he's from. I think they lost 5,000 people in that time. The growth areas are Pittsburgh and surrounding areas, Philadelphia and surrounding areas, and Center County. I have to laugh along with him at that fellow from New York that called. I just can't believe that there's people out there that have drank the Trump Kool-Aid and believe the lies that have been put out by him. So have a nice day, and thank you.
Professor.
Look, I think the caller is correct in identifying the fact that outside of Center County, which is where the main Penn State campus is, in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, there's demographic decline across the state. Deindustrialization. In 1950, 50% of all American jobs were in the Rust Belt. 50%. And no region of the country has taken it on the chin more than the Rust Belt. And rural Western Pennsylvania, it might be rural, but there was a lot of industry, a lot of good union jobs. And they have just taken it on the chin. And for people who are Democrats and big Harris supporters who kind of like, how could they? I hear that again and again, support Donald Trump. Look, Donald Trump speaks to their issues in a way that the Democratic Party just stopped doing so. In 2008, Barack Obama actually campaigned. He had an army of people in 2008 in western Pennsylvania. There's a little town outside of Erie called Corey, Pennsylvania. And it is now a Donald Trump stronghold. Barack Obama won all 4 wards of Corey, Pennsylvania, going away. Why? He actually sent people out to campaign, and they actually made arguments and focused on issues that mattered to white, rural, and small-town Pennsylvanians. And what the Democratic Party did after 2008 is they quit going there. Now, in 2020, the Erie County Democratic Party made real efforts in repairing this urban-rural divide. But this is what people have to understand. I mean, for Democrats who are out there wondering, how could they vote for Donald Trump? I mean, go out to the Rust Belt and see a lot of the economic despair and Grandparents want their grandkids to live down the street, not in Nashville. And that's a reasonable concern and anxiety. And, you can disagree about how they vote, perhaps, right? But I think that's the key in understanding this populist movement on the right and why so many Pennsylvanians are willing to opt for, in 2016, somebody who'd never held elective office.
Franklin's in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Undecided. Franklin, why is that?
To be honest with you, I call it on the independent, what's usually the independent line. I'm decided. I'm going to vote for Harris.
Okay. What's your question or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm sorry, maybe it's because, as one of the previous guests said, we've been inundated with ads, and it's just getting a little bit, everybody's nerves are a little bit frayed. We're ready for this election to be over. But I'm frustrated with the speaker here, and I haven't heard one bit of research or insight. He's a professor. I mean, do you have any kind of data, polling, research, study to back any of this up? What I hear is a lot of anecdotal certitude from a guy who's lived in Pennsylvania since 2007.
Franklin, what specifically are you looking for? On what? On what?
Okay, well, first of all, Pennsylvania is not the Rust Belt. Second of all, he keeps ascribing to Pennsylvanians the feeling that, well, from what I can tell, he's basing on nothing further than his stepdaughter goes to somewhere in Philadelphia and he lives in Erie County. Well, Erie County is about as different and isolated from the rest of Pennsylvania as you could possibly get. So I'm looking for give me some substance other than your anecdotal opinion from someone who's really, you've only lived here since 2007. I'm a 10th generation Pennsylvanian. Most of us are born and raised here. We don't go anywhere. And it feels a little bit like you're maligning our state. You're maligning the way we look at the future prospects of our state and our children. And I mean, if you have something to back that up, I'd be grateful to hear it. But I just hear a lot of anecdotes.
Okay, Franklin, we'll get a response.
Well, the farthest thing I'm doing is maligning the state. I really enjoy living in Pennsylvania. I think it's a lovely place. I have a PhD in American political history. I study the history of modern America. Erie County is part of the Rust Belt. The city of Philadelphia itself and Baltimore are also Rust Belt cities that have been transformed. Deindustrialization hit the city of Philadelphia like a hurricane in the 1970s and 1980s. And you can go to Philadelphia today and you can admire the way that Pittsburgh and Philadelphia have both transformed themselves. Pennsylvania, large parts of it are most certainly part of the Rust Belt. And it's just a fact that deindustrialization has hit Western Pennsylvania especially hard. I'm not maligning the state. In fact, what I'm trying to make an argument is that there are lots of small town and small city Pennsylvanians who feel left behind economically. I mean, the data is just wholly and totally clear on this. That deindustrialization and globalization have hit downscale. Not just Pennsylvanians, but have hit downscale Americans of all races disproportionately hard. I mean, I have a PhD in history. I'm part of the knowledge worker elite. I'm doing well in the 21st century economy. But the people who aren't doing well are people without a four-year college degree. I mean, that's the divide in America today. It's between college and non-college. And you go to outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and you have a large proportion of people who don't have four-year college degrees. And the understandable anger is that the American dream should work for more people than it does now. What I'm trying to do is trying to understand kind of the Donald Trump phenomenon and, try to maybe help explain to Democratic voters, what they can't fully kind of get their minds around. I have nothing but admiration for the state of Pennsylvania. It's been very good to me. I think it's lovely. The people are good. I just think more people in Pennsylvania want the American dream to work for their family, not just those in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh with four-year college degrees.
We'll go to Waynesboro, Georgia. Donna supporting the former president. Hi, Donna.
Hi. How you do this morning?
Morning.
I appreciate this C-SPAN so much. I enjoy it.
What's your question or comment, Donna?
My comment is that I'm for Trump for a number of reasons, and I'd like to give my reasons because I think it would help Pennsylvania as well as all the states.
Can you give us your top three, Donna? Your top three reasons?
Yes, I'm for back in the police because of the crime that's going on right now.
Okay.
And I believe that Trump will support them, and they've all support him, the police, and I believe that they will learn more about how, in this day and time, to fight the crime that's going on.
All right, number two, Donna.
Number two is that, of course, the border. I believe that we do need to secure our border, and I believe that Trump is the one to do that.
Okay, number three.
Number three is abortion. I believe that it's been so much animosity about this subject, and I've been against abortion from the very beginning.
All right, Donna, I'm going to jump in. Professor.
This is, Donald Trump's electoral coalition is more than just kind of Rust Belt voters who feel left behind. Our caller, these are classic social conservative issues that would have, been in the Reagan column in the 1980s. There are a lot of social conservatives out there who support Donald Trump out of kind of social conservative issues that kind of transcend economic concerns.
Cincinnati, Ohio. Sheila is watching us there, supporting the vice president. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, C-SPAN, for what you do. I have a comment.
What's your comment?
My issues are climate change and gun control, which are the least subjects that both candidates don't talk about. Number two, if the Electoral College, gerrymandering, and lobbying were abolished, we'd have a cleaner House and Senate. All one has to do is listen to former President Trump, and that would make you decide not to vote for him. He rants, and he really doesn't say anything about what his policies are. He doesn't have them posted, whereas Kamala Harris does on her website. I listened to both of them, and the reason I'm voting for Kamala Harris is because I like what I'm hearing from her.
Okay, Sheila, may I ask how old you are?
72.
72. And climate change and gun control, your top issues?
Yes.
All right. Professor.
Look, these are issues of concern generally of a lot of younger Americans in their 20s. And look, there's a lot of kind of liberal activists who place these at the top of their list. They're, how many times do we hear about school shootings? One can fully understand why gun control would be a top shelf concern. In Erie County, where we used to get 200 inches of snow a year, I didn't even run my snowblower last year. Climate change, you see it in front of you. This is the reality. In an era in which grocery prices have gone up 20%, in a place like Erie County, where they're very kind of cost conscious. People make less money on average in Erie County than the rest of the state. Economic concerns are going to be more important to most voters than the very real concerns of gun violence and climate change. That's just the reality.
Professor Bloodworth, what does the most recent history of politics in Pennsylvania tell us? What are the trend lines? Where is this state headed?
The state is headed where, kind of pointing in the direction of where the whole nation is, that there is a profound rural-urban divide. In the city of Erie itself, it's a Democratic stronghold. outside the city of Erie, this is where Republicans are gaining momentum. And so, we have a rural-urban divide. We have an urban America, dominated by people like myself, the knowledge worker elites. I mean, the economy is working really well for us. And so, what many people in my demographic, when we hear the different left or right populists, we think, well, what's the problem? Our lives are good. And out in rural America, where the economy is not working for the same number of people, they are more open to both populists of the left and right. I mean, Bernie Sanders did well, better than Hillary Clinton did in Rust Belt areas. He won Michigan in the 2016 primaries, for instance. And so Pennsylvania points to the at least near-term future of an American politics that's defined by a rural-urban divide between the college and the non-college. And I would argue non-college Americans, and I can fully understand this, what they're saying is that they want the American dream to work for them as well. This is not every Trump voter, as we heard from the caller in Georgia. There's lots of social conservatives out there. Their economic concerns are, that's different. They have a different reason for voting for Trump than others. But in Pennsylvania, what we see with the state moving towards the Republicans, it's in small towns and small cities that are not enjoying the fruits of prosperity in the same way that Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. I mean, we see this in Wisconsin and Michigan. We see this across the nation. To get out of this hyper-partisan spiral, I think what we need to have a more shared prosperity. Your kids should not have to move to a big city in order to get ahead. We need small cities and small town America to enjoy the fruits of the prosperity the same way that big cities do. Knowledge worker elites kind of have to look in the mirror and say, you know what, maybe the economy works well for me, but it also should work well for people without a four-year college degree.
Professor Bloodworth, we appreciate the conversation this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.